I'm Masud Hossein. So today I'm actually hijacking this location, which is Josh's usual place.
Who am I? I'm a process engineer by background. I love mining, and I'll talk a lot about my journey into mining and how I fell into it and how lucky I've been through my career in mining.
Fantastic. So your first job was with BHP?
Yes.
Wow. And then it just rides on from there on.
So one of the readings that I did when I was at Rio, while I was in the IPP team, is I read about decision analysis. And, it was developed by the CIA of all places. They wanted to understand how an operative would make a decision and how effective that decision was. And they wanted to be able to post-review it.
So Paul, I know that you've written a book. Can you tell us something about that book?
I've done 2 books. I'm working on a 3rd book.
Wow.
So, and the first book was actually how I got a job at South 32.
So more along the lines of the people who are actually listening to this podcast, it's about helping those individuals using the use case of the AI in their daily life as well.
Correct.
Fantastic.
And that's what my 2nd book's about. It's about how do you combine your work and your life, and how do you use AI to streamline all of it.
Welcome back to the Gold Room. I'm Masud Hossein. So today I'm actually hijacking this location, which is Josh's usual place. He interviews people and talks to different people, but I'm going to take it over today. I was supposed to be co-hosting, but fantastic opportunity. I just took it over from him. Now, I've got an amazing person who I was managed by in the past. So he was my manager, Paul McDonald. He's from in between at the moment. So how about that? So I've got Paul. And Paul, I would like to thank you for coming to this episode. I really enjoyed working with you. And more importantly, now I think I should be actually interviewing you because of the fact that you're so fascinating in terms of knowledge, and you bring in so much of wealth of knowledge from the AI perspective. And I thought, fantastic opportunity just to get you on the studio where usually Josh is interviewing you, but it's me. All right,
Yep.
cool.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So now, Paul, the usual way, how Josh usually runs this story, it's all about life and times. Can you just start your journey? Tell us where you're from, who you are, and we go from there.
Yep. So first and foremost, so Paul McDonald, but first and foremost, I'm a proud dad of 2 amazing young men, and I have an amazing wife. So I'm very blessed in the home side of things. So who am I? I'm a process engineer by background. I love mining, and I'll talk a lot about my journey into mining and how I fell into it and how lucky I've been through my career in mining. So yes, I'm in between things at the moment. Unfortunately, I had a dream job that I was doing very successfully, and the decision was taken out of my hands where redundancy occurred. And I'm still on the job market trying to find work. So a little bit about myself. I came to Australia through immigration. My parents are Scottish. My dad's a boilermaker. We came from South Africa. So he immigrated from Scotland to South Africa, lived in South Africa for a period of time, and then moved over to Australia. So we came over here in the 80s. And I grew up in Perth. I grew up in Fremantle. Fremantle was basically my haunting ground. I went to South Fremantle Senior High School. I went to a public school. I didn't go to a private Ivy League kind of school. So I bombed out at school. I did not do very well at school. I rusted about for a little bit. And then when I turned, I think it was 21, I had to figure out what I was going to do for my life. And when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for my life, I had a kind of come to Jesus moment where basically a voice in my head said that I should be a metallurgist, a process engineer. And I went home, I was in a nightclub of all places. I went home, told my mum that I was going to be a metallurgist, and she was looking at me like, my son is 21, he's absolutely confused about what he wants to do in his life. Now this is a great idea. anyway, long story short, I figured out how to get into mining through metallurgy, and I applied for a number of universities around Australia, and I was fortunate enough to get into RMIT. And that was a huge challenge for me because, number one, I didn't know anyone in Melbourne at the time, and I moved over there. I was on an adventure, and I started my university education career. I was very successful in getting my degree, but also building a network of friends over there because, ultimately the only times I would come back to Perth was when I was doing vacation work. So I'd work out on a gold mine or I'd work on a mine somewhere, earn some dollars and then go back again to Melbourne. So it was a fantastic breeding ground for me, to get one, an education, but two, come back as an operator on a gold mine or something like that, get experience, hands-on experience that led me to getting a job at BHP. And getting the job at BHP was...
How did you actually get to Melbourne, like from leaving home?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. So, at the time, during the early 90s, mid-90s, there was a lot of controversy about, in Perth in particular, about some rich people and politicians who had their children getting a full ride. And I'm using an American term, the full ride, basically getting Austudy and not having, means tested. Now, basically, when I went in on Centrelink, my parents, my dad was a boilermaker, my mum worked at Curtin University, they weren't by far any stretch of the imagination rich. But the means test at the time said I couldn't get any Austudy.
Right.
So I thought that I was indignant about that. I thought that was not ethically right when you've got the haves that, should be paying their way. They were getting a full ride. So I went, okay, I've got to figure out how to do this. So I pestered a guy at Centrelink and ended up getting a manual and then read the manual and figured out there was a loophole in there and I exploited it. So
wow.
Basically I hacked the system.
Right.
This
is really interesting from the fact that you had to actually go through such a big manual or, all that reading at the age of 21 where you're trying to figure out what the hell you're going to do to yourself. And you figured out you want to be a metallurgist or of a kind. And then you just...
It didn't go with... so I had some form of research. I started to research what was metallurgy and
Right.
The benefit of metallurgy was you could be out in the field, but you could also be in an office.
Yes.
And my dad, being a boilermaker, always complained about being out in the extreme weather and being out in the weather and not having an air-conditioned room or, somewhere to go apart from having crib break. So, I ended up thinking that was a good option for me. Plus, it was a science that I was really interested in. It was a technical field that I was really interested in.
Wow.
And that's what ultimately, led me to get over there was, getting the successful full ride of Austudy and then getting work during vacation periods back on the mine site. So, before I'd finished uni, I had like nearly 26 weeks of work experience as a metallurgist.
Wow.
And it led me to getting a job at BHP.
Right.
And, I'm very fortunate about my time at BHP because, it taught me some really, really interesting things about technology and innovation and cultural acceptance of things. So, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. Fantastic.
So your first job was with BHP?
Yes.
Wow. And then it just rides on from there on.
Yeah. So BHP, I walked in as a graduate engineer and I walked away as a full-fledged process engineer, and I did that in a very quick space of time. In fact, I was a graduate engineer for about probably 6 months, and then I got given the screen house as well as the car dumpers as my area of process engineering.
Wow.
And I just took it and ran with it and, made some process improvements in there with some throughput increases that we were able to do. And I was able to present to Brian Gilbertson, who was the CEO of BHP Billiton at the time when it all got changed over. So I was able to present to him about the work that I'd done. So it was an amazing experience.
Wow. So that means that you actually went through and actually straight out of uni and start hitting some really high, quick goals as well.
Yeah, and what I learned from that was really early on, there was a program that BHP ran, which was really interesting, or BHP Billiton ran, which was really interesting. It was basically what they called the hypos, so high potential employees, got invited to Melbourne to go to their Aiken Hill, which is what it was called. And Aiken Hill was basically effectively a university campus, but for BHP Billiton only. You had chefs there. It was like a full resort.
Wow.
I think it was a 9-hole golf course. There was a golf course there.
Yep.
That you could use, and effectively they had organisational psychologists that would just assess you. They would put you through the ringer, get you to do things, and you would be assessed the whole time. And they would teach you fundamentals about leadership.
Wow.
And
leadership programs.
Yeah. So what it taught me, one of the core things that it taught me very early on in my career was that, as a technical discipline and being a technical expert, you could have a really, really high score technically on a solution that you were going to provide. But if culturally it didn't have the acceptance, then you weren't going to succeed.
So it's more like the IQ and EQ.
Yeah, you had to combine the two.
Right.
So they called it the Q and the A. That was it. The Q was the technical and the A was the cultural acceptance.
Wow.
And I've used that all the way through my career. You need to make sure that whatever project you're doing, you're going to have cultural acceptance. So is the operator going to accept it? Are the other engineers going to accept it? Is the business going to accept it?
All right.
So, and as I was deploying more technical stuff, I was realising that you need to be at the forefront of technology. And if you're thinking out in the space of where are we going to be in 5 to 10 years' time, if you can always be in that space, then you're future-proofing yourself. And that's how I've pretty much governed my career up until now.
Wow. So it's more like the horizons of innovation. So something like, Horizon 1, 2, 3, where you actually talk about the Horizon 1's just improvement of your current, and then the next set, and the next set, which is more like, looking outside the box, which has never been there.
Yeah. So I'll use Kaizen as an example, right?
Sure.
So the lean principles.
Yep.
There was a model that was presented to me really, I don't know when it was. It was probably 2005 or 2006 when I was at Adelaide Brighton when we were talking about, because I worked at Adelaide Brighton, and that's a cement and lime facility down in Munster. And I was a senior process engineer down there, and we started talking about human performance and Kaizen and human performance. And while Kaizen hasn't been recognised for this, but there's a growth potential equation that you can apply. So this Kaizen growth potential equation really fascinated me. And what it was all about, and from a technology point of view, what it fascinated me about was you can have knowledge, you can have skills, and if you multiply that with the attitude, you'll have a magic quotient, right? But it can actually get discounted if you look at opportunities and threats.
Right.
So the numerator, the thing that at the top of the equation, when you're looking at the divisible there, the O is opportunities. The T, which is the denominator, sitting on the bottom, that's the threats. So with however you see technology or innovation, if you see it as a threat, then your human potential will actually go down.
Wow. Yeah.
So it made that mathematical equation didn't become like just a mathematical equation in my head. It became a pictorial sense of how the world worked and how it still works today for me. Yeah. So I use that in saying, okay, I need to build my knowledge set or my skill set, but if I've got the right attitude and I see the opportunities in what I'm doing here, that will just fast track everything. So that's why I've always been trying to adopt technology as much as possible and trying to understand the next move in technology.
Wow.
So hence the reason why AI is a really interesting thing to me.
Wow.
But robotics is the next thing that I'm going to get really interested in.
Wow.
Because it's how can we use that in mining?
Wow, that is fascinating because let's get into the AI part. Now let's get into the real crux of the reason where I thought, you would be a fantastic person to come onto this one. So, Paul, give us a bit of a rundown of what grabbed your attention in AI first time in mining, because you've been in mining for so long, and how did you get yourself interested? Usually, people take it as a threat, taking jobs away.
Well, I've
Onto you.
I've got a very fundamental view that it's not going to take people's job. It will take some jobs.
Yep.
But look, if you think about how society's adapted and shifted with every new technology, and I'm going to use the car, the horse to start with. We had a mule and a horse, and we'd drag it, we'd put a load on it, and we'd take it up a hill, and it would carry the burden, right? So the mule and the horse became a really, really important tool for a human.
Yep.
Then what we did was we went, I need to increase my payload and I need to get there faster. Then a horse and buggy started to come around. Then what they started to do is stagecoaching of getting people transportation from one point to another. So they would get a pack of horses that would drag it faster and it would go faster. Then Carl Benz invents a vehicle, a car. And people thought that there was a novelty at the start, right? People thought, we've got these modern bikes and it's a novelty. Then people started to industrialise it and say, well, how can we actually use that? How can we use it? And all of a sudden this mechanical device is replacing not the human, it replaced the horse, right? The human's still involved. The human is the driver. On the horse and cart, the human was the driver.
Right.
So I see technology as an enabler for the human. You're still driving it. So when it comes to AI and the threat of AI, I don't see it as being the big threat because it still needs a human component. After all, business is an interaction between two parties and business needs people.
Yes.
And people need to make agreements. You can't have a computer make an agreement with another computer.
Interesting.
So that's how I see it. I see it as an adjunct or a complementary auxiliary to use, similar to a calculator. It's a tool. And I see AI as if you're jumping onto AI now and adopting to it in mining as an early adopter, you're going to fail, but you're also going to learn a lot that the applications are quite powerful, providing you get the right people running and developing these systems.
Right. That's very deep. So what really caught you in mining?
Yeah, that's a great question. So look, go back to BHP.
Right.
Very first time I seen something that was similar to what we would say is the very early phases of AI was we were looking at a lump maximisation project because lump was receiving a lot of premium versus the fines. So we were trying to maximise the lump, right? So, if you're a mining engineer, you would change your blast patterns or you would change your Q's RAM, right? Yep. So you change your Q's RAM and you would change your whole dynamics on what you're blasting. But when you're at the port receiving all this stuff, you want to preserve that lump. You don't want it to decrep any further, so you want to preserve it. So when we were putting it through the screen houses, we would go through tertiary crushing circuits. And what we would do there is we would try to change the gape in the crusher to try and maximise the lump recovery. And what we did was we actually used CSIRO, who had a high-speed camera sitting over the top of the conveyor belt, and as the material was running, it was creating particle-shaped sizes online at that time, and it was adjusting the gape of the crusher.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first experience of kind of a fuzzy logic.
Artificial intelligence on the go.
Yeah. So you were tuning it as a metallurgist or a process engineer. You were tuning it based on, hey, I've seen that particle size. Maybe we, instead of making it adjust the gape at 15 or 20 mil, we would adjust it at 18 mil. And see what kind of recoveries we would get. So we ran a pilot plant on that and it was quite successful. And then what we were doing was we were adjusting the gape. So that was my first experience of where, you were loop tuning, you were doing things that were improving the process on stream, live, right there.
Wow.
And that to me, that technology and that initial have a go at this was really my first, foray into, hey, this technology piece is a big enabler. Then comes along, I go to Coburn Cement and I work at Adelaide Brighton with Coburn Cement, and our kilns, they burn in gas and coal, right? So dual fuel, sorry. And what we were doing there was we were, watching the CO content at the back end of the kiln, and we were adjusting our flame intensity at the front end. So a human can't respond fast enough. So we were using fuzzy logic that Toshiba had developed. We were using the first phases of Toshiba, of fuzzy logic, to actually control how much coal and gas were going into the kiln at a particular time to make sure that we didn't have an explosive event. Because if you have CO going through electrostatic precipitator, you would have an explosive event because you've just got a spark just sitting there. So you would have to keep that content of CO low enough so you wouldn't have an explosive event.
Right.
So that were my first two real big
AI interactions.
Well, it was the early days of what you would class as AI. I mean,
it would be more like automation at that time. Now it's more the trendy conversation of AI. Is it?
Everyone's graduating towards ChatGPT, a natural language model, right? Where I just want to know something like, how long will it take me to walk to the moon?
Right.
And ChatGPT will give you that answer. So everyone's going to that. But in an industrial sense, the P&ID loop tuning was the early days of that, right? And regression analysis was the early days of all of that. So if you think about, you do a feed and a product, and you do a regression analysis on the recovery of that.
Yes.
That's the early days of a neural network. And that's a neural network is ultimately what AI is. It's just doing a whole range of neural networks, and it's networking its way and tuning its way to a solution that's got a high correlation that will give you the right answer.
Wow.
And that's how I see AI working. I mean, when I was at Rio and, we're looking after the supply chain, I was in the integrated planning division, we developed, my team developed, and I was I was the principal of my team. We developed a roadmap for AI because at the time Rio were really curious about IBM, Watson.
The Watson.
And we had AWS, they were floating around trying to sell us some wares. And when we sat down with them, the first question I asked is, how does it work? And they went, well, it's just a big black box. And, being part of a big conglomerate like that, you don't want to release all your information in one foul swoop to people you don't really know. You want to protect that as much as possible.
Sure.
So I convinced the business that and my management team and my GM at the time, that we should actually start understanding how AI is built. How does it all come together? So what we did was we started to develop a roadmap of how to deploy it. And the reason why we wanted to deploy it was in the iron ore system, you would have AI is a great way of standardizing, right? And there's been a big push across all industry to standardize. And what it does is it allows you to have a standardized decision matrix. So you will consistently do the same decision. So when it comes to a train line, you've got 11 mines, and you've got basically a number of car dumpers you can send to and different ports. Your dynamic scheduling group would be able to then decide live which way things would go. And what we would have is you'd have 4 shifts with a group of guys that were in that team who would rotate desks.
Right.
So you would never get a consistent decision based on the same set of scenario.
Right.
It would always be different. And what I've always found is whenever you go and critique or you do not a post-investment, but a post-decision analysis on it, people naturally think that, you're going to have a go at me about it. And you're not. What you're trying to do is you're trying to understand.
You're being informed.
Yeah, so that you can then say, hey, how do we understand what the triggers are here and what are the avenues of decisions?
Right.
So one of the readings that I did when I was at Rio while I was in the IPP team is I read about decision analysis. And, it was developed by the CIA of all places. They wanted to understand how an operative would make a decision and how effective that decision was. And they wanted to be able to post-review it. So this is where this whole thing about decision support came from, and decision analysis came from. And there's very few organisations that really, truly grasp that. If you think of any investment that happens, you do a post-investment review, but the one fundamental that comes in to any of these post-investment reviews or any part of human interaction is ego. Ego gets in the way, and the uncomfortable truths don't necessarily want to come out because it exposes people. Not for the fact of, hey, that was in the circumstance you were in, that was a great decision. But if you were able to buy yourself some time, you would have chosen a different path. And if you think of Dimitri's home country where Chernobyl happened,
yes,
the where Chernobyl happened, the decision timing that individual had, the supervisor had to avoid that disaster was very low, and his ability to make the correct decision was dramatically reduced because he had a very short space of time to make a decision. And that's always played in my mind about as we speed up our decision making, and AI is going to be one of these things, it's going to speed up your decision making. As you're speeding up that process, so I'll go back to the horse and cart. We probably moved at 10 kilometres an hour with the horse and cart. Then we introduced Carl Benz's car. We started to get up to 200 kilometres an hour. Now we've got maglev. Now we've got electric cars that can get us, 3.1 seconds and you're doing 100 k's an hour or 100 mile an hour. All this technology is allowing us to get faster and faster and faster.
Right.
Now, is the quality as good? No one's questioning that. What we're all questioning is how do we get more productive and faster? But how do you do it so that you only do it once, but you've done it right? And there's no rework.
Yeah, I mean...
That's the nirvana.
That's the nirvana, that's true. I guess you've led lots of teams, lots of major projects, a lot of change management challenges that you've gone through. Where do you see AI helping leaders make those decisions during those transitions? Because, as you know, ego.
Mm-hmm.
So how can... AI help those leaders in making better decisions or get to nirvana?
Yeah.
Or do good rather than just make margin.
Well, look, don't get me wrong. Margin is the fundamental thing. You don't go into business if you're not making a margin.
Absolutely.
You might as well just leave your money sitting in a bank.
Exactly.
So first and foremost, you need to have cash flow. You need to have a decent margin in whatever you're doing. To get back to your question about what are the opportunities for a manager as a leader. So look, for me, I've done the early stages of resource development, resource geology. I've managed teams in that space. I've managed teams in operations, and I've managed teams in closure. In all those aspects, AI can be useful. And it's not just like, if I'm a manager in operations, I'll use AI. You can use AI in studies. You can use AI in resource development. You can use AI in every single segment of the life cycle. Where the mining industry and where a lot of industry has gone into AI is about human productivity. So you think of keystrokes on your computer, it's like Big Brother watching you. That's where everyone has kind of gravitated towards and not really realised the true benefit of what AI can help with a leader. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, look, the administrative burden that you have, you might be fortunate enough as a leader, you might have a personal assistant that helps you. But if you can construct and understand AI, you can construct bots or agents depending on where you want to go. But if you create bots, you will have 100, maybe 200 personal assistants at your fingertips
Just prompting you.
all the time that's prompting you.
Yeah.
But it's all about your design of that.
So the ethics.
It's not so I think we need to park ethics, right?
Sure.
The reason why I say we need to park ethics is there is an ethical dilemma here. People may lose their job or they're being redirected, redeployed somewhere else. That's the ethical decision. But what it does is it enables a leader to get away from the administrative kind of dealing with, I've got to check through a checklist, or I've got to look at someone's.
Just like planes and pilots.
Yeah, I've got to look through this checklist. Well, you can get a bot that says, find me the problem with this checklist pretty quickly, or can you highlight to me what the problems are in the pre-starts here?
Yeah.
Rather than you having a whole stack of pre-starts at the start of your shift, vehicle inspections, you could get AI to just ingest all that, and then he could find vehicle XYZ has got a problem that's been noted twice.
Right.
And then it would prompt you to go, okay, I need to make sure that there's a service order in.
Right.
And that vehicle then goes in for maintenance, as an example.
Right.
Right. So as a leader, it allows you to move forward at a faster rate, right?
Okay.
But it doesn't allow you for good decisions. That's the one thing that I want to be very clear, because you still need to understand the fundamentals.
Right.
You need to understand the fundamentals of mining. You need to understand the fundamentals of that role that you're in.
Right. Cool. So I'm going to go with, do you believe AI will eventually transform the entire mining value chain? Or will it always be more assistive tools to human or something else? What do you think? With the trends that you've seen for last 2-3 years, especially when the ChatGPT thing came around, and how do you see that transforming?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of hope, but I think right now we're going through a bit of hype.
Yeah.
And a lot of C-suite people and, are being sold a lot of hype.
So the Gartner hype cycle.
So if you think of the Gartner hype cycle, and I'm sure that people will start researching what that is. The Gartner hype's curve basically talks about when you bring new stuff in. If you think about the internet, internet was invented in the 70s or the late 70s, 80s. And it was used primarily in the military side of things. But then in the 90s, the very early stages, it was bulletin boards. The universities were talking to each other, right? Then it became the .com thing in the mid-90s that ran up the stock market. The NASDAQ went crazy, right? Up to 99 and then 2000 and then pop. That's a classic hype curve, because people thought, hey, there's going to be, Yahoo Finance, Yahoo's going to be the big thing. What is Yahoo now? America Online is going to be the big thing. Where is that now?
The bubble has burst.
The bubble burst, right? So I think AI is in that same trajectory. Now, Sam Altman and others that are running, OpenAI and other AI systems, they hope that that's not going to be the case. But if you think about it, you had this big uplift in the late 90s up into, this .com thing, and then woof, she went back down again. And then Mark Zuckerberg and others came in and started Facebook and Meta, all in that 2004 period when it was in a bit of a valley.
Lower time, yes.
Because what they did was they started to realise, hey, it is a powerful tool. It did have a lot of hype, but I'm just going to use it for how I want to. I want to know what people are doing in the university, and I want to start creating a profile about myself in the university. And that's how Facebook started. And then it just became viral, right? And it became this thing of everyone wanted it. And then LinkedIn gets formed, because professional networks. So it was the power, what the internet was the power of networking.
Yes.
And the internet was the tool of the power of networking, as opposed to being the end all and be all. It was all about networking.
So it's more like it's actually gone through the peak and now it's in the trough or heading towards the
And
trough.
then it rebuilds again.
And rebuilds again.
Yeah, but it's completely different. If you talk to the original guys in the 90s when they were thinking about, the futurists of what the internet would be, it's only now achieving what they thought it was going to be. You would stream TV, you'd have surgery done online.
Flying doctors do it.
But it took a long time for the adaptation and the evolution of that to be able to get to that point.
That's right. Awesome. Excellent. So where do you think, culturally, the biggest challenge we see is that the leadership buy-in can workforce trust it, and the sheer pace of tech development and mining, which is still mining, where do you see that happening? What is the biggest challenge right now? Do you see that senior management like yourself have the struggles in deploying AI technology in the mining?
Yeah, great question. The reason why I think that's a great question is any technology in terms of IT program that gets deployed in any mining company comes with a lot of zeros.
Yep.
And comes with a lot of pain. And the reason is because use cases change very quickly. Redundancy of systems coming quicker than what you can deploy at. If you think about people were all going on about 4G and making sure that, they'd have telemetry out and, remote areas of their mine site, having it as 4G. Well, 4G is becoming irrelevant now. It's 5G because you can get more bandwidth for your signal. So, look, I think from a technology deployment point of view and leaders, I think what we need to do is ensure that it's product to market.
Is it actually delivering
Is
the
it
value?
giving you the value that you want product to market? Because that's where you're going to get your cash flow from. You don't get cash flow from deploying an AI system unless you've got something to sell. So
the Power BI dashboards, for example.
Fundamentally, you need to go back to that whole point. Can I get this product quicker, higher volume to the market at the right cost and volume? If I can get it in that space and AI is going to enable me to do that, then hell yeah, I'm going to invest in that. But if you can't answer that fundamental question and you can't see the technology development going in that's going to deliver that, then you shouldn't invest in it. I know plenty of engineers, Masud, and I've been one of them, who want to jump on the bandwagon of something new and sexy, but then when you get asked that brutal question of how's this going to give me more cash flow, you make it up.
That's right.
Because you put a whole set of rosy assumptions in.
Inventions.
You invent, as mind planning, sometimes you have to invent some numbers, right?
That's right.
Not that I'm saying that you should be doing that because you still got JORC to follow.
Absolutely. There are some guidelines and there are standards that you need to actually go through.
There is a range of assumptions that you can use in mind planning that allow you to have a little bit of wiggle room. And like that through every single discipline through mining, you have wiggle room. And really fundamentally it comes back to is if a C-suite or a board are sitting there and they've been advised that AI is going to take over the world, I think they're not realising that this is going to be quite a journey. And yes, early adopters are going to fail, but it's great to be an early adopter.
Being laggard is not worth it.
Being a laggard is definitely not worth it. You're going to be left on the sidelines.
Yeah.
You have to start adapting and learning. Now, it's about what investment you want to make into it. Are you going to go solely holus bolus into every single part of your life cycle of deploying it, or where's the biggest bang for your buck? And my question about where the biggest bang for buck is if you look at, I mentioned JORC code, if you look at the resource to reserve conversion rates of all the mining companies, we high grade the shit out of our ore bodies.
Right.
We all do it because what does it do? It gives us an instantaneous cash injection. But when it comes to a subject matter that I've just recently come out of, which is mine closure, you're left with the conundrum of, I'm closing this asset and it still has plenty of economic life in it.
And of course,
but it's not at the margin that you wanted to make it at.
that's right.
So you're effectively depleting the resource for the state or wherever you are at a quicker clip, and the state doesn't benefit from it, or the employees don't benefit from it, because, you know, some employees would want to be there for 20, 30 years. Some people might want to do FIFO for the rest of their career, and they like that site. They don't want to leave. So effectively, the decisions you're making could potentially
Have a detrimental.
have a huge detrimental effect.
That's right.
So where I see the power of AI coming in is how do you ensure that your dilution levels aren't significant, that write off your resource to reserve? And then how do you discover areas where you can actually eke out through your cutoff grade a better solution? Because as we know, mine planners are left to try and run multiple scenarios, because we'll get back to ego. Someone wants to run a mine plan a certain way, whereas that might not be the most optimal mine plan that gives you long life, lots of dollars, and gives you less risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's how you convert resource to reserve. And then when you have a boundary that you have to follow, and you do a life of mine, and you basically have all that schedules coming out, and you want to make sure you stick to that long-term schedule.
Correct. And conformance to that plan
absolutely
has to be. So this is the
and that's where a lot of these changes comes in.
well, to me, that's noise.
Conformance is the noise.
That's the noise in the market, in
That's
the
right.
system, right?
That's
and,
right.
And
They're not able to conform. Leadership does not conform to that plan.
correct.
Why?
So I've always gone with the approach in my career that it's not the equipment that fails. It's the operating philosophy that is letting you down.
That's right.
It's the psychology you're using to exploit that resource that lets you down. Now, if you can pause for a second and say, have I got my operating philosophy correct? Am I deploying things quickly? And I'll use an example, right? When I worked at Rio, we were running a mine plan and a mine supply plan once a month. So every month we would get up supply plan up. And that was not an easy task. That was a team of 10 people coming up with the mine plans, coming up with the scheduling and all the rest of it. And what we would found in the weekly and the dailies is the conformance to that wasn't there. And then we would correct the supply plan to try. So what we were inducing was a lag or a shock in the system, because we were catering to that deviation. Mm-hmm. And when we asked the question, if we ran it for 90 days, would we still see the level of deviation? And we did.
Of
But
course.
it meant that we did less of this noise in the system.
But definitely AI can help in gapping that field.
Absolutely. It would suggest to an operator that don't move that dig unit because your grade isn't quite where you wanted it to be, because that ore block has been assessed to be at that grade. Dig through it. What do? It's not at that grade. Move that dig unit, move it to somewhere else because we need that grade. Rather than actually going, no, I've chewed through that ore block. It's followed the mine plan. And by the way, our kriging isn't correct because that ore block didn't return the result we expected. That estimate wasn't right. So then we go and we don't target what's wrong with our drill campaigns. Why did we not get the right result here? We cover up that because we've moved a truck. We've moved the dig units to somewhere else.
Which brings in a lot of
More inefficiency.
Yeah, and it brings an anger and anguish to a lot of operators who are actually operating those machines.
Yeah, so what do we get called as engineers? Shiny bums? Right? Because we're sitting at a desk telling people to move.
Go and see it.
Go look and see.
Exactly.
That's the fundamental that when I was at Rio looking after some graduate engineers was, why are you still clean?
You got to be dirty.
It's 10:30 in the morning. You're still clean. You have not got one skerrick of iron or dust on you. You need to get out in the plant.
You
And
got to
go
look, see, make time motions and all of those observations.
Absolutely.
So, Paul, I know that you've written a book. Can you
Yes.
tell us something about that book?
So while I've been redundant, And while I've been doing my job search, I started to think about how am I going to learn a bit more about AI? And I started to play around with ChatGPT just to understand GPT.
What's the name of the book?
So the book that I've got 2 books. I've done 2 books. I'm working on a 3rd book.
Wow.
So, and the first book was actually how I got a job at South 32. So my most recent job before I was made redundant, I was at South 32 and I was in charge of the closure plans and doing the studies associated with the closure of assets. So I had a global portfolio. It was a dream job. It was a great job. It had a lot of exposure, but the processes and systems needed to be built. So I had my head down as a GM, had my head down doing rather than having my head up because we needed to build. We needed to build the capability and the capacity within the business to be able to close assets.
Sure.
So that process of finding that job, I actually used ChatGPT. And the process that I used is basically what I've documented. And my book is called How to Land Your Job with ChatGPT.
Wow.
But it's under a pen name, So my pen name is Murphy Fox. And it's a funny story about how I came up with that.
So it's Murphy Fox's Paul McDonald.
Effectively, that's, it's like J.K. Rowling's, with Harry Potter.
Wow. Cool.
Right? So effectively, I just started documenting the process.
Fantastic.
So it teaches people, what is an ATS system? An ATS system is an automated, it's AI that's basically filtering through all the resumes and then giving the recruiter the top 10
The HR perspective.
of the key words and the key themes that are within this role description, who meets that.
So more along the lines of the people who are actually listening to this podcast, it's about helping those individuals using the use case of AI in their daily life as well.
Correct.
Fantastic.
And that's what my second book's about. It's about how do you combine your work and your life and how do you use AI to streamline all of it.
What's that name of that book now?
So it's how to streamline your life
Wow.
with ChatGPT. So in that regard, what I've tried to do there, and, I'm doing some heavy, even though it's out in the market, it's in an ebook. The beauty of an ebook is it allows you to heavily edit it.
Of course.
So, as I've
So you can be current as well.
Correct. So when ChatGPT 5 came out, I had to edit my books to include ChatGPT 5, which is a new model of ChatGPT.
So you do all this on the public forum? So don't you have a lot of the issues we see now is that you actually put information into this system and that goes in public and it does not remain as yours because it becomes a searchable item for somebody else because
Correct.
they actually trained the system. So how do you keep your IP to yourself?
Well, you don't, effectively, right? Because it's for the greater good. Like it's the chat, depending on the subscription model you have.
Okay.
So there's subscription models that OpenAI have for ChatGPT. Elon Musk's Grok has a similar thing. They have a subscription model and then a free version. The free version will only give you limited a number of asks of ChatGPT.
Sure.
And same with Grok. It'll only give you a limited number. If you have a paid subscription, you have different tiers of subscription. If you have just the basics tier, which is I think it's $20 a month, that is publicly available what you're doing and it helps tune all the rest of it. But if you buy an enterprise system, which is a bit more expensive, there's an agreement with OpenAI and the enterprise that it's that information doesn't go out to the public. It stays within your enterprise, but you're using that as an engine, and it doesn't feed back.
Right.
So depending on which subscription model you use, that's what will happen when it comes to AI. So you can have publicly available information.
So saying that mining companies moving into the bandwagon.
You get the enterprise.
Right.
Yeah. And
So you have a closed loop system, so you actually
Correct.
keep it behind the scene.
Correct. And the IT gurus will figure that out. Now, if you're a Microsoft, you've got Copilot. Now, I'm not a fan of Copilot only because it keeps suggesting Microsoft products and likewise for, Tesla stuff, it'll, with Elon, it will start suggesting all his products.
Right.
But OpenAI is the one I use predominantly because of the natural language.
Sure.
And it's very, very effective. And the book, getting back to the book, it teaches you the steps to go through how to do your cover letter, how to do your resume, how to prepare for an
basically
interview.
logging your own diary. So it's almost like the diary of Paul McDonald.
Yeah,
Or
it's
diary of the
basically
CEO.
it was my journey to get that job.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so cool.
Like even the
Documenting your life is
even the bit
important as
of
well.
me, I applied for the job, and I'd sat there and I was thinking, oh, it's a bit quiet.
So the psychology
So-
behind the scene.
So I went to ChatGPT and said, oh, can you tell me some motivation? I haven't had a phone call. Can you give me some motivation? And it gave me motivators.
So it's like a
statements.
psychologist.
So it was kind of like a little friend that would tell me, oh, don't worry, this is the thing. It's a good sign. It's not, these kind of things. And then, more recently with the roles that I've been going for, I've been receiving quite a number of rejections. And how do I deal with the rejections?
Wow.
I don't want to load the burden on my wife all the time.
Yes, it does have an impact.
So it does
at home.
have an impact. Look, you get a no for a job and you haven't even been interviewed with no feedback. You don't know what you did wrong. So what you want to do there is you want to make sure that you can use something. So I've started to use AI as part of that kind of psychological assistance as well, because it will help you. Now, the human connection's still there, but you can help process, and then you can, like for me, I can then talk to my wife about, hey, did you know that ChatGPT told me this? And as a psychologist, she would go, that's actually quite good feedback. And how do you feel about that? And then we would talk about, as a human interaction, about our feelings, whilst I've already had an opportunity to process what has been suggested to me.
Wow, that's
And
inspirational.
then the book also goes through interviews. It takes you through the STAR model. And then, whatever job role you've got, I've got some prompts in there so that you can get it to prepare from the job description what kind of behavioural and technical questions you may receive during an interview so you can prepare.
Wow. So I'll get us to actually get that link of your book as well, so we actually know what that book is, so that we actually have a link to that book, so our listener can actually listen to that.
And hey, look, if it helps one person,
You've done good.
I've done something good.
You're leaving a legacy behind.
That's driven me quite a bit, Masud. I think you mentioned ethics before. For me, if I leave this world better in the regard of treating people with respect and being respected by other people, then the world's a better place.
Absolutely.
And I think where we are going with the advancement of technology,
And AI.
psychologically, humans aren't prepared, and we're having more incidents of road rage. We're having more, people getting angry. And we're not asking the question in society about why. Why is that happening?
The 5 whys.
No, we don't do the 5 whys
Exactly.
very effectively as humans. We get told when we do an investigation, well, do the 5 whys. But you should do that all the time to get to the root cause of what's driving you
Yeah.
or what's happening. And to use ChatGPT or to use an AI system, they're fallible. So you have to use the 5 why system whenever you're using any AI to get to the root cause of what you're looking for. So, and that's some of the things that I try and help in the book as well, is to try and help people understand that it's not the first pass of write me a high score ATS cover letter or a resume. It has to be based on fact that you did that work, and that if someone does a reference check on you or you get the job but you lied through it, that's not what I'm intending for people to do. It has to be based on the fundamental fact that you actually have these skills.
So there are people who would exploit that system as well. And of course.
I think organisations also exploit them, right?
Right. So coming. I guess if I was to actually now reflect on our show, I guess important one question I would like to ask is, looking 10 years down the track, Paint us a picture. What does mining operation of the future looks like with AI fully embedded? More importantly, you're coming with 2 to 3 years, two to three decades of mining professional as well as management and leadership experience. Give us a little bit of an insight on that one, from your opinion.
Look, there's a lot of doomsayers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the author that wrote about the singularity.
Yeah, Ray Kurzweil.
That's it, thank you. But Ray Kurzweil initially introduced the idea of machine learning, and he introduced the idea that that would be in 2050 where you would have singularity, which meant that you would have effectively what everyone's chasing at the moment, which I don't believe in particularly too much, which is the generalized AI. So you basically have more than a 4-year-old intelligence, like it will make its own decisions and be able to do things. That's what he termed as a machine having thought. So it was truly having its own independence and thought. And he predicted back in the 90s that 2050 would be that time. He's been recently asked, would he revise that time frame? And he did. He's reduced it down to 2030. Now, there's a lot of conjecture about 2027 being the singularity. I don't know. But a lot of doomsayers say when the singularity happens, it's kind of like, the Terminator situation where...
Skytrax.
Yeah.
Skynet, sorry.
Skynet, where humans are then regarded as not required because we actually damage the earth. We fight against each other. We fight based on really stupid reasons for religious or cultural beliefs and stuff like that. Now, they're important to those individuals, but in the whole scheme of things, a computer will think that that's not logical and it's not benefit. So it may make a decision to just basically create a virus, right? But the contrary to that is we have the ultimate kill switch for AI and technology, and that is an EMP burst. So electromagnetic pulse, either through an airborne nuclear device that would just fry all the electrics. That's how you kill AI. So if AI gets out of control and they've got no kill switch, that's the one way to do it.
So is it a positive looking forward or a negative?
I personally think there's a positive in it.
Yep.
Because I think what we all forget is humans are extremely creative and adaptive. And we will adapt and be very creative to a solution. And I think where we will be in 10 years' time is going to be extremely exciting. And in how is mining going to benefit from that? I just think that mining is going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries. And the reason why I say that is because the attraction of people to come into mining, which is regarded as a dirty industry. If you go and talk to any high school kid, they don't want to get into mining unless they're in WA. If you go to the US and you went to a high school in the US and you said, what do you want to be as an adult? They all want to go to Silicon Valley. They all want to be in technology. And what mining needs to do is embrace technology to get that talent pool to come in. In my view, I've only got about another 15 years left in my career. And I want to hand off the baton to someone and to the industry in a good place. And I think it's exciting times.
So mentoring young superintendents, engineers, what skills should they focus on thriving in AI driving, mining future? Or your advice, where do you want to talk about that legacy from your end, and how do you want to pass on? How do you want to train those young superintendents and engineers out there?
Look, the fundamentals of what is the science that you're doing. So let's park up the truck drivers and the digger operators. They're fantastic people. And the drill rig operators, fantastic people. But if you think about the scientists that are doing it, they have to get to the fundamentals. They have to know why they do what they do and how they're contributing to that product getting out the gate. That's ultimately They can't escape that. You cannot give that to AI to do. There still needs to be a human somewhere in that mix that understands the fundamentals. Now, if everyone thinks that the C-suite or a general manager is going to be the only person that on the site and then it's just going to be robots running around, I think we're sadly optimistic about that. I think that's way too optimistic to achieve that. Maybe that's what the objective is, but it's certainly not, because it certainly will reduce the amount of safety incidents that happen. And so to me, to answer your question, I think personally, to bring these young graduates in, I think what we've got to do is be able to teach them the fundamentals and to respect the operators. The operators are on a machine. They get to see things operating across their whole shift, the 12 hours they're on shift. They observe. They're great observers. An operator is one of the best observer. And if you're an engineer that sits in an office, you're not going to ever get that intel on a machine that's not quite behaving properly, or hey, its hoses are just about to let go because it's creaking. You don't pick that up in telemetry, but an operator does. And hey, look, I was doing my pre-start and I noticed this area is warmer than normal. They know there's more wear happening. So you can't displace that. I think if we think that we're going to displace all these people who have the intellect to be able to pick up on little small vibrations or small changes and say that all the machines are going to run all that, I think it's really fanciful. I think we're still going to need humans.
So more jobs, less jobs.
I think there'll be new industries come from it.
So transform jobs.
Absolutely. I think what will end up happening, you think about the car industry, and I'll go back to Carl Benz. He had a little jalopy, right? And just a motor on the thing with wheels. And I've been to the museum, the Carl Benz Museum in Mannheim, where you actually see his original.
Wow.
Right? So if you think about that, right, there was no seatbelt. There was no mirrors. There was no real comfortable seat. There was no real handbrake. You think about it, there was no real gearbox and clutch. It was like, So if you think about this industry, when we adopt to this AI and to technology, this industry is born from it. If you think about Rio's deployment of AutoHaul.
Yep.
Right? Or the
Part
autonomous...
of the mine of the future, yep.
And of autonomous trucks.
Yep.
There was a new industry that came from it. People couldn't believe that they were getting so accurate running up the pit, going up the roads, up the ramps, that they had to then vary the code so that it didn't go down the same ramp because it would create grooves that was dangerous for people that were going in, because it created such big grooves that it became dangerous for an operator to drive down there. So it creates new opportunities and new industries. And I think we're at the very forefront of this technology. And I still think we're in the hype side of the equation on the Gartner hype curve. I think we're on that hype state. But in 10 years, I think we will start tapping into what the true benefits of what AI will be. Maybe it's quicker because AI is coming in faster than what, even Kurtzman thought. Kurtzworth, sorry. And what he thought it would come in on. So we are rapidly increasing. But I think what we need to understand as well is humans have a certain amount of decision fatigue and fatigue to technology as well. And we have to be really balanced on how much we bring out at what time. And I think what everyone's thinking is just going to be this huge pendulum shift that then means that no one has any jobs. And I don't see that world.
So last question from my end. You, as a mining leader, where do you see yourself and how do you see AI helping you into your future?
Yeah, great question. Look, I see myself as, being a good leader, an exceptional leader for people.
Which I am very proud of you.
Thank you.
Being my manager in the past.
Because at the end of the day, I still think that you have to treat people with respect and you have to be open. And you need to, as a leader, and it's very easy to say this, to park your ego, right? Because you have your own personal biases. But when you treat people with respect and you listen, you're receptive to it, I think what ends up happening is the team starts performing. Now, if I go back to that original thing that I talked about, that growth potential model, to get a high-performing team, you got to have the right skills and knowledge. But attitude is a big component to that high performance. And if you can get your team to have the right attitude, your quotient just goes up. So for me, as a leader, adapting to new technology like AI and robotics in the future, because I think robotics is the next thing. I think it's about how we treat people with respect and how we integrate with the technology to ensure that it's maximising the amount of yield and tonnage that you're getting out that gate to a sale. Because if you can't prove that, and you've deployed this system and it's not delivering that, then you need to understand why. And that still needs humans to talk to about why didn't this go well? Because it goes back to that whole thing about the Q and the A, which is what I got taught at BHP. The technical, which is the Q, the technical solution that you've got in place, but then you've got this cultural acceptance. How does the operator accept it? How does the engineer, how does finance accept it? How does legal accept it, your change, what you want to try and do? And I think you tried to layer in there about the ethics. There's a lot of ethical dilemmas that comes along with new technology, particularly AI, in displacing people or just, changing their roles. And from a legal standpoint, how do we deal with that? Those questions haven't been resolved. And I think what society is doing is looking at government to try and regulate that. And I don't think that's their space. The space should be for every corporation to come up with an ethical way of dealing with that. And that's my belief.
Wow, that's very deep, Paul. Thank you so much for coming into this show.
No worries.
And thank you very much for giving us all that wisdom as well and the knowledge that you shared with us. And definitely the 2 books that you've written so far probably would be something that a lot of our listeners would be interested in listen to as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. The Gold Room podcast, I think it's an important takeaway to listen and learn from all of these experts that we actually bring in. An important part of this one is that please subscribe to this channel, and please do share and make us aware, because we're trying to do good to the society in some way or the other, especially in our industry. Mining industry requires leaders like Paul and the others that come through this show to actually bring in more technology, more wealth, and more understanding and everything else that goes with it. So thank you very much for listening in. Of course, I'm Masud Hossein, not Josh, but I tried to do my best by replacing Josh at this episode. Thank you very much.